Hello and welcome to the video. This is my video on how to set up this thing here. Now this is the HEEWING Ranger T1. Now I've had mine for long enough now to fly it, but also I've been very lucky. One of my flying buddies actually got his before mine arrived. So we'd set his up first, which meant that I was able to kind of crib from his settings as well. And knowing how somebody else has set a plane up can really help you get it into the air with the minimum of hassle. So in this video, what I want to do is go through the mechanical setup. So central gravity, where do you need it to be, the throws, the trim positions. I've also got INAV in this. I've got a little Maiden F411 WSE flight controller with DJI HD system in this particular one. And I'll go through the tricks in INAV as well, how I've got that set. Also have footage of the Maiden. The genuine Maiden flight of this model went incredibly smoothly. INAV is obviously helping a little bit with that, but you don't need INAV for this to fly. You can set it up and fly it manually without a flight controller. It is nice and stable, and there are time codes down below in case you want to jump to any of the individual parts. Now I'm sure you've seen this model on lots of other places. This is a plane that lots of pilots are raving about, and it's easy to see why. Now I like the fact that you can take the wings off, that the tail's removable, and everything is really nicely laid out. I've done a couple of mods on mine, just a few, most of them around airflow for the air unit because it gets quite warm, but there are already lots of 3D printable parts available for this model, so already there's a big community being generated for mods and extra pieces. That's usually a good sign that there's lots of interest in a model and people wanting it to adapt it, because it is very adaptable. There is a lot of space in here for a decent sized battery and VTX or an air unit and a little flight controller or stabilizer. Or if you don't want any of that, you know what, you can absolutely just build it without having any of that madness in it and just use a standard receiver. So let's go through the setup tips and cover the basics. Center of gravity is good, but I would make sure that the center of gravity, it dangles from the little catch that it holds the front canopy onto. If you dangle it from that, then you should find your center of gravity. I, however, would put the CG towards the front of that catch rather than the back. You'll find that you get a lower stall speed, and when it does stall, it's far less aggressive. In terms of the throws for the control surfaces, you're only going to need 8 to 10 millimeters maximum. In the flight footage for the Maiden I'm about to show you, I have 10 millimeters and it gives a very lively response. Control surface alignment, you don't really need any particular biases or reflex or any of that messing about. Just set them up so that they're in line with the wings and the elevators in line with the horizontal control surface at the back as well. If you have it like that, with the CG on the right point, it's going to be pretty great straight out the box. We don't have to worry about correcting for torque because this is a twin and the props are rotating against each other. Interestingly, from our testing here, we found that it can fly on 2S, 3S and 4S. On 2S is a gentle flyer, and I wouldn't recommend it on 2S for anything but a very calm day. It feels more like a slightly beefed up ZOHD drift on 2S in fact. And the checking with HEEWING, the LVC is off on the supplied ESCs that come with this PMP version that I have here. If you're going to run something like a 2S lithium ion pack, then I would make sure that any LVC that is on the ESCs that you're using is turned off. Amp draw at 50% cruising throttle is about 7 to 8 amps. That's what we've been flying ours on here, really 2S and 3S. On 4S it gets some pretty good speeds up. And with a 3000 mAh lithium ion 3S battery, which is what I'm flying mine with, I can get around 20 minutes of cruising easily. Stall is fine, but do get that central gravity towards the front of the handle. If it's at the back of the handle, it will still fly okay, but your stalls will be aggressive and it won't fly as slowly. Now, with all of the basics for a manual setup covered, let's talk a little bit about how I've set up INAV 4. Now, I've used the target to get the DJI on-screen display working, so sadly have lost the ability to drive the LEDs with this particular flight controller, which is why I was playing with the LED driver. I've not set up differential thrust on this particular model. I've just set up both of the motors and ESCs on a Y cable into the flight controller and just calibrated them. I'm not a fan of differential thrust on INAV. Standard motor and ESC settings, so 50 Hz servos, regular standard stuff for the ESCs on this PMP. The servos worked out very close to 1500, so they're nicely set up, and they haven't had to move very far from that on the trimming flights that I've done. And I used 70% rates initially with the control surfaces set up as shown here. So I connected my control rods to the middle hole on the control surfaces. I think you can get away with actually having it on the outermost hole. I think that's probably a better position, and that's probably going to be fine with 70% throws. GPS standard stuff on these flight controllers, the Maytech F411 WSE. I've got the GPS on UART1 and the DJI FPV VTX stuff on soft serial 1. Unfortunately, that does use my LED pin, which means I can't control the LEDs. The only last thing is fixed wing level pitch trim. I've set it to 4 degrees for the Maiden. In reality, it needs to be about 3.8 because I get just a little bit of increased altitude when I go out and fly. So with that all said, let me show you some footage from the maiden flight of this very plane. So should arm it to the position. Okay, that one okay?
Yeah, off she goes.
Okay, out of auto launch. Bring it back because that got far away pretty quick.
It's quick, isn't it?
Right, so currently in horizon mode by default. So we're recording, which is good. In terms of the trim, I would say that we're slightly off. I think we need to be about there. Yeah, that's better. Still a little bit up. But doing about 50 kilometers an hour at about 50% throttle. Okay. Now, the question is, has it trimmed for manual mode? Should we try?
Go for it. Let's have a look.
Ooh, yes.
Is that manual?
Yeah. Blimey, Charlie. Oh, wow. She's lively.
The rates are high, aren't they?
Okay. So we're, I'd say, about 50% throttle, about 54 kilometres. Bring the altitude down a little bit. Oh, wow. This is lovely.
It is great, isn't it? It's lovely, yeah.
It's very quiet. It's
Yeah.
very stable. Right, let me get a bit of altitude because I'm going to try and see where she stalls.
Yeah.
Because we've had lots of different. I've got a little bit of moisture on my lens. Right, we're about 120 meters. Let me throttle back. So here we go. We're in manual as well, so this is all me. Gosh, she doesn't lose speed very well, actually, does she?
No.
She doesn't lose speed very well at all. Yeah, I was in a slight dive there, which didn't help. But even so, yeah, we'll see when she comes in. Blimey, Charlie, that is, yeah, I would probably drop the rates down a little bit more. Or increase my expo. That's a little bit lively. If you'd like a lively plane, it's good.
What amp is yours drawing on sort of cruise?
It reckons 7.6 amps, about 50% throttle, 66 kilometers an hour. We've been flying just under 4 minutes and it's pulled about 580 milliamps hours out of the pack. So, yeah, very sippy on the power. this is just absolutely lovely. Not using differential thrust, because we know that's not great, but this is just zero drama. Beautiful plane, very quiet, very sippy on the power. 22 satellites now, blimey. Yeah, I could do this all day. Now, right, I'm going to bring it in. I'll call that done.
Yeah.
Right down the field. 60 kilometers an hour. I'm going to throttle back, throttle back, throttle back. 35 kilometers an hour. She's getting a little bit unhappy. So I'm doing about 30 kilometers an hour. I'm throttling off. Okay, there we go. Fantastic. That works all right. So in terms of the key points, what would be my takeaways? First of all is the biggest one, I would say, is watch that central gravity. You kind of want it balancing here at the front of this little dangler holder rather than at the back. I find that if you do that, it's going to behave an awful lot better. We initially was flying my buddies where it was kind of balancing on the back of that little handle. That is fine, but you will pay a penalty. Your stalls will be more aggressive. Having it at the front means that you can go down to about 15 miles an hour before you start to get any problems with stalling. Other one then is that it is incredibly easy to build. Obviously the wings snap on with this thing, so does the tail. So in terms of the building, particularly for the PMP model, it is no real drama at all. The only thing you have to figure out is which way round each of the motors are turning. In this way the motors are turning out, and this one is the motors are turning the other way round. It was really, really well set up straight out the box, and everything was beautifully finished. It is a shame about the LEDs in the tips. They're both addressable WS2812 LEDs in the PMP version. My friend who bought the kit has just regular dumb LEDs in the ends, and I'd actually probably preferred those, because obviously as a regular fixed wing pilot you kind of want green and red. Having them both addressable with the same address means that you can plug them into a flight controller and you can have them whichever colour you want, but they're both going to be exactly that same colour. It's a little bit of an oversight from HEEWING. Hopefully they fix it in future versions. It's also a shame that the driver LED thing that comes in the box, if you're not using a flight controller that can control the LEDs out in the wings, just seem to pulse the colours as well. Pressing the buttons just seem to change the colours that it pulses through. Again, that's not really what you want as a pilot. Ideally, you kind of want to be able to set them up for however you want, maybe with a flashing white strobe or a red at one end, green at the other. So again, that's also been fed back to HEEWING as something that I think would be useful to change for future editions. And again, the only thing that I've really done here is I've added a small vent in the canopy at the front that's going to blow air. You can see the gap there. It's going to blow air onto the air unit, and there's an exhaust at the back just to help it keep a little bit cooler. Even in the really cold weather we have here in the UK, the air unit's been getting a little bit warm, so in the summer it's going to stand no chance at all. Now that isn't fantastic if you want to use the barometer to kind of measure your height in a flight controller, because obviously you've got the air whizzing through the canopy, so be aware of that. That is one thing you need to be careful of. Interestingly, with the air unit at the front of the HEEWING F01, the wing version, I don't seem to have the same cooling issues. There's a little bit of airflow through the front that this doesn't have. So in summary, I can see exactly what the fuss is all about. This is a fantastic little twin plane with the extra room inside. There's loads of space for all modern electronics. The tail and wings are removable in the field without tools, and that makes it ultra portable. The ability for it to fly with 2S to 4S with either LiPo or lithium ion make this a very versatile FPV and filming plane. This is one of my new favourite planes. This has 5 pills and is highly recommended. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organised into easy to follow playlists that if you're trying to learn a topic will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.